Imagine watching a 4-ton animal kneel beside a lifeless body, press its forehead gently against the cold skin, and stand motionless for hours. No sound, no movement, just presence. This isn't a scene from a nature documentary script written to tug at your emotions. This is something researchers have witnessed, filmed, and struggled to explain for decades. Elephants grieve. They hold vigils. They return to the bones of the dead, sometimes years later. And the more scientists study this behavior, the more one haunting question refuses to go away. Do elephants understand death the way we do? In this video, we're diving deep into one of nature's most profound mysteries. We'll uncover what actually happens when an elephant dies inside a herd. The rituals, the silence, the strange tenderness. We'll explore what the latest science says about animal consciousness and emotional memory. We'll examine the stunning parallels between elephant mourning and ancient human funeral traditions. And we'll confront what these behaviors reveal about the inner lives of animals we've shared this planet with for millions of years. What you're about to discover will permanently change the way you see elephants and possibly the way you think about grief, memory, and what it truly means to mourn. When an elephant dies, the herd doesn't scatter, it gathers. Eyewitness accounts from researchers in Kenya, Zimbabwe, and India describe a remarkably consistent sequence of behaviors. The moment a herd member collapses, whether from age, injury, or illness, the surrounding elephants grow visibly agitated. They vocalize in deep, rumbling frequencies, many below the threshold of human hearing. These infrasonic calls can travel miles across the savanna, and within minutes or hours, relatives from distant areas begin moving toward the site with unusual urgency, as though summoned. What follows is what scientists now cautiously refer to as a death vigil. Herd members crowd around the body. They use their trunks, organs of extraordinary sensitivity, capable of detecting chemical signals invisible to us, to touch the face, the mouth, the feet of the deceased. They breathe in deeply, drawing the scent of the dead into a complex olfactory system that can distinguish thousands of chemical compounds. Mothers have been observed refusing to leave the body of a calf for up to 3 days. They nudge the body repeatedly as if trying to wake it. When they finally do walk away, they move slowly, looking back over and over, as if each step away requires a separate act of will. In one famous documented case, in Amboseli National Park, a matriarch named Eleanor collapsed from illness. Another unrelated matriarch, Grace, rushed to her side, used her tusks to try to lift her, and stayed with her through the night. Eleanor was not Grace's family. The bond between them transcended bloodline. It was something the field of animal behavior is still working to name properly. Here is where elephant grief becomes something even more extraordinary and more unsettling. Elephants return to the bones of the dead. Not just once, repeatedly, sometimes years after an animal has died. When a herd encounters a skeleton, even one scattered across a wide area by time and scavengers, they slow down. They approach with care and deliberation. They use their trunks to lift and examine individual bones, especially skulls and tusks. They pass the bones between one another. They hold them. They carry them short distances before gently setting them down. The silence that falls over a herd during these moments has been noted by virtually every researcher who has witnessed it. Controlled experiments have added scientific weight to what field observers had long suspected. When elephant skulls were placed alongside the skulls of other large animals, rhinos, buffalo, elephants consistently showed significantly more interest in the elephant remains. They weren't responding to smell alone. They recognized their own species dead as distinct, as meaningful in a way that other bones were not. Perhaps the most emotionally powerful version of this behavior involves family recognition beyond death. In a landmark study, Cynthia Moss of the Amboseli Elephant Research Project presented a group of elephants with the skull of a recently deceased matriarch named Tina. Tina's own family, her daughters, her sisters, spent far longer with her skull than unfamiliar elephants did. Her daughter returned to the skull again and again, pressing her trunk softly against it long after the others had lost interest. She recognized her mother in bone across the silence of death. This forces a question that science has not fully answered. What is actually stored in an elephant's memory when they lose someone they knew? Is it a behavioral imprint, the way a dog might wait by a door, responding to habit rather than longing? Or is it something structurally closer to what we experience, a vivid internal representation of a specific individual, a felt sense of absence where presence used to live? Neuroscience offers a compelling partial answer. Elephants possess a highly developed hippocampus, the brain region most closely associated with memory formation and spatial navigation. They also have unusually large and complex temporal lobes, the same cortical regions humans rely on for emotional processing and deep social recognition. Their brains, in precisely the places where grief is generated in us, are built for extraordinary depth and nuance. Elephant mourning isn't simply an emotional response. It functions as a social institution, a structured set of behaviors that shapes the herd across time and generations. Matriarchs, the eldest females who lead elephant family groups, are particularly central to this. Their deaths are the most disruptive events a herd can experience, and the rituals surrounding them are the most intense. Long-term studies tracking herds in Amboseli found that when a matriarch died, her family group showed measurable physiological changes: elevated stress hormones, disrupted movement and feeding patterns, a marked decline in collective decision-making efficiency. These effects persisted for months, sometimes years. The reason becomes clear when you understand what a matriarch actually represents. She is not merely a leader, she is a living archive. Over her 6 or 7 decades of life, she has accumulated irreplaceable knowledge. The location of water sources during drought years, the subtle behavioral signals of approaching predators, the history of relationships with neighboring herds. When she dies, that archive vanishes. The grief the herd displays may, on one profound level, be the herd's processing not just personal loss, but the loss of its own collective memory. Death in elephant society also restructures the social order among the living. Alliances shift and reform. Young bulls who had remained close to their mothers begin the slow process of separation. Subadult females step into unfamiliar roles, their confidence tested by new responsibilities. The mourning period appears to function as a crucial interval of social recalibration, a collective pause in which the herd reorganizes itself around the shape of a new absence. Then, there is the behavior that edges closest to what humans would call ceremony. Herds have been documented covering bodies, using their feet and trunks to gather dirt, branches, and leaves and arrange them over the deceased. This has been observed in not only with their own dead, but in a handful of extraordinary and well-documented cases with dead animals of other species, and even with deceased humans encountered in the wild. The intentionality of the covering behavior, the selection of materials, the deliberate placement, remains one of the most contested and fascinating areas of elephant behavioral research. Whether it constitutes a true burial ritual in any philosophically meaningful sense is debated, but the behavior itself is undeniable. It has been filmed across multiple populations, on multiple continents, across different cultural contexts within elephant society. For centuries, humanity drew a firm line between human consciousness and animal instinct. Grief, we told ourselves, was uniquely ours, born of self-awareness, of the terrifying knowledge that we ourselves will die, of love in its most complex and self-reflective form. Elephants are dismantling that boundary in ways that are increasingly difficult to dismiss or rationalize away. They do not merely react to death, they attend to it with structure and intention. They remember the dead across years and decades. They visit the places where loved ones fell. They comfort the dying. They transmit mourning behaviors to younger herd members through exposure and example. Grief for elephants is not a private rupture in the fabric of an individual's experience. It is a shared, transmitted, multi-generational practice, as cultural in its consistency as any human funeral tradition. This carries a direct and urgent implication for the world we currently inhabit. Elephant populations have been devastated by decades of poaching and accelerating habitat destruction. In heavily poached regions, researchers have documented something deeply troubling. Young elephants who witnessed the violent deaths of family members displayed behavioral symptoms strikingly similar to post-traumatic stress disorder in humans: hyperaggression, social dysfunction, and inability to form the normal bonds that elephant society depends on. Grief, violently interrupted, becomes trauma. Trauma passed silently through the herd like an inheritance no one chose. When we kill elephants, we are not simply removing large mammals from a functioning ecosystem. We are tearing apart a social and emotional fabric that took generations to weave, one built in no small part on the accumulated wisdom of how to face death with tenderness, with presence, and with ritual. If this video made you see elephants and grief differently, hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second and it helps more people find this story. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring the hidden emotional lives of animals. There is so much more we haven't told you yet. And drop a comment below. Do you think elephants truly mourn, or is this something else entirely? We read every single response, and your perspective might just end up in our next video. The conversation doesn't stop here. See you in the next one.